everyone, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Becky, and welcome to Sounds Like a Bunch of
Hoopla! We're both from the Taylor Community Library, and we're here to recommend some items to use your Hoopla checkouts on.
These are items that we have already borrowed or are planning on borrowing soon. This week we're talking about ebooks and audiobooks.
All right, Becky, let me know. Tell me, what are you currently reading or listen reading?
So I have just finished a book, and it was so good. It was Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. Lisa Jewell is somebody that this is the second book I've read by her, but after this one, I'm officially declaring I'm a fan of her. I will be recommending her to everybody who asks for an adult thriller. I'm a big fan. So this one did not disappoint. This is about 10 years ago. A girl named Ellie Mack left home and she never came back. Now her mother, Laurel, is trying to put the pieces of her life back together, and she meets a man named Floyd, and she thinks that everything is starting to turn around in her life. But now she has more questions about what happened to her daughter all those years ago after meeting his daughter, Poppy. So this book was a wild thrill ride that I absolutely loved. Some parts were a little bit predictable, but it was done in a way that you were like trying to figure out what's going on, and there's all these twists and turns, and you have different points of view from other characters in the story. So it was slightly predictable, but you wanted to finish in order to find out if you predicted correctly. I did find out, and if you read this book and you enjoy it, I would suggest going on her website, because I found out on Goodreads that there was supposed to be a different ending for this book. And because in the acknowledgments, she says something about like, thanks to her editors for such a radical change to the book. So people kept asking about it, and so she has posted what the ending was supposed to be on her website.
Sweet.
So I do agree that the ending that is officially published should have been the way it ends. It's definitely a lot more interesting and thrilling, but it was satisfying to read what could have happened, because that's the ending that I was kind of expecting. And yeah, it would have been like super predictable and like kind of boring if I was like 100% correct. So it was really cool to figure that out.
I'd actually probably read that one. Why don't I tell you what I'm reading, since you just gave me such a great one? I think you'll like this one as well.
Oh, good. I'm excited.
So you probably have heard of this book. It's called Everywhere You Don't Belong by Gabriel Bump. It's super popular right now. It's a coming-of-age story of a young Black man named Claude, who's growing up in the south side of Chicago. So he was abandoned by his parents, and he's being raised by his like unconventional activist grandmother. She's awesome. But he's basically just looking for a place to fit in. After the unjust murder of a young Black man in the riots that follow, he tries to get away from everything by going to college in Missouri. But of course, he quickly finds that the challenges he's trying to avoid from home are not so easy to get away from. So this book, obviously right now, is just such a real portrayal of life in today's America, but it also like points out the irony. So there's a lot of parallels to the social injustices that are happening and racism that's going on in the world, but it also provides a little levity with some of the humor and internal struggle with going on with Claude right now. It's like a contemporary literary fiction, just such a good coming of age story that I would gear towards adults and older teens. But yeah, it's getting a lot of traction, and I saw it get released on Hoopla, so I was like, yep, we're reading that.
The next one that I want to talk about is one that I read for our Books and Bites book club. What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli. This is a book about two boys that have like a meet cute in a post office. One has recently come out, and the other one has been out for a long time, but is going through a pretty messy breakup. And I'm pretty sure that it was like one of his first real relationships. So we have two boys that are still kind of figuring out who they are today. It ends up being like a coming of age book about love and self-discovery, and it's done really realistically. The ending is very realistic. It doesn't have like a fairy tale happy ever after ending. It's done really well, and it leaves room where there could be another book set in the same world or follow the same characters but like later on in their life, which we're all really hoping for because it's such a good book. I felt like the entire time I just like couldn't stop smiling and I didn't want to stop reading it. Like it has a lot of like comic relief and like silliness and ridiculousness while also dealing with figuring out who you are. So it was a really, really good book, and it's been out for a long time. It's gotten a lot of hype. I'm pretty sure it's won a bunch of awards, and I've waited so long to finally read this book, but I'm so glad that I did. It's definitely worth all of the hype.
But that actually, I've got a good one that it's not a YA book, so you can't choose it for your book club, but it would be a great book club book.
Okay.
I also started reading this fantastic novel that came out in, I believe, 2017. It's called Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Kaur Jaswal. And I know you've probably seen, you've heard of this book.
Yes.
I don't think I realized just exactly the breadth of it when I bought it for the library. And then also when I checked it out, I'm like, oh yeah, that's been on my to read list for 3 years now. I might as well. Let's try it out.
I can't believe it's been out for 3 years.
I know. It's such a lively, witty book. And it was a super fun dive into another culture. So a little background on the book. It's about Nikki. She's the daughter of Indian immigrants who's, been trying to distance herself from the traditional Sikh community and, make her own way in London. So she finds herself in need of some money after dropping out of law school and sees an advert for a teaching job at the community center. So she takes this teaching job to teach creative writing to a predominantly Punjabi neighborhood community center in London. And then through some miscommunication, the students who show up, who are all Sikh widows, they show up actually to learn basic English literacy. Not at all any creative writing, not ready for that. She tries to teach them to read, obviously, with like baby flashcards and stuff. And this pisses them off. They don't want to be babied. They want to learn through oral storytelling. And that's where the title comes in. An erotic story. So it's just so funny and great. And of course, there's a bunch of subplots about like the tension between generations of like the old traditional and the new coming generations who are trying to mix that traditional with the new age. There's some mysterious and unsolved deaths by 2 young women that are kind of looped into everything. Mm-hmm. And then everything that they have worked for in the group is eventually threatened by this self-appointed moral police. But it's just a fun read. Just read it. It's scandalous. It's informative. It's geared towards adults, but I think that older teens would be okay with it.
All right. So now on to what we want to read or listen to.
Woo-woo.
The first one is one that I've seen a lot of. It is an Own Voices story, and it's called You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. I'm so excited to read this book, and I've been hearing really good things about it, even from people in like my own like social media bookish community that don't normally read YA contemporary. Like even they're loving it. So this book is about Liz, who has always believed that she is too Black, too poor, and too awkward to shine in her small town. She has a plan to escape the small town and go to this uber elite college. However, because she is poor, she has to go through financial aid to try and get there. And unfortunately, her financial aid falls through. This weird, in my opinion, high school that she goes to, they offer a scholarship for the prom queen and king.
For being the most popular.
Exactly.
Here's some money.
Exactly. So, I mean, maybe there's more to becoming their prom queen and king. Maybe it's not just a popularity contest, but also like maybe you have to like have a certain GPA level and stuff like that. Maybe it's more of like a almost like Miss America.
Yeah, there's a talent portion, philanthropic portion, all that.
So she decides that she's going to go for prom queen, even though that's like the last thing anyone would expect from her. Along the way, she ends up meeting this new girl that is smart and funny, and she's just as much of an outsider as Liz is. And she's also in the running for queen. So now Liz has to decide will falling for her competition be her dream, or will it crush her dreams? I hope everything works out and she goes to college and she gets the girl. It definitely sounds like it's going to be really, really good.
I think we're just on a kick of that kind of genre in adult and teen, because my want to read is Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall.
Yay!
So as you know, Becky, I finally read Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston after your constant nagging. And
which is on Hoopla.
I will be forever chasing that high of that book.
Yes.
And Boyfriend Material gives me some serious RWRB vibes from the cover, even the cover, to obviously the themes and the genre that it's going into. But Boyfriend Material follows Luke O'Donnell, a rock star's son who has to fake a relationship with a posh lawyer to look better in public after falling from grace in public's eye. It sounds fantastic. It's an LGBTQ romance with a ton of humor, which honestly is my new favorite genre. I'm all for it.
So I have read it. I definitely think that if you like Red, White, and Royal Blue, you'll like Boyfriend Material, but it's definitely not on the same level. You're still not going to find that high, unfortunately.
Never will.
Yeah, like I don't think anything's ever going to compete with that book. It's so good, but it's definitely something that if you like that one, you'll also enjoy this. This one I feel is maybe a bit more realistic. I feel like it deals with a lot more darker subjects than Red, White, and Royal Blue did, whereas Red, White, and Royal Blue touches on some very important things, but it's really more of like fluffy romance cuteness. It definitely has that humor factor, though. You're going to be laughing like the whole time during that book. So for my next want to read, gonna get dark. We went from fluffy to dark, but it is a book that sounds so good, and I'm like, this is gonna be fantastic. It's called Amy Chelsea Stacy D by Mary G. Thompson, and it's about a 16-year-old named Amy who returns home after being kidnapped for 6 years. She was kidnapped with her cousin and best friend Dee, and when she comes back, Dee is not with her. So she's scared to tell anybody what happened, and she feels like she must keep all these secrets. Soon she realizes that hiding what happened won't change anything, and that she must go back before she can move forward. Like that's the description. That line of she must go back before she can move forward is in the description. And I don't know if it means like, does she have to go back to where she was, or like mentally does she need to go back and deal with the trauma? I don't know, but either way, I'm so excited about this book. It sounds like it's going to be so dark. I know that there's like hints of Amy having to deal with not only finally coming to terms with what happened to Dee and what happened to her, but also trying to move forward because now everything at home is like very, very different. It sounds so good and I'm so excited to read it.
My next want to read book is The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. This is about the untold lives of the women who were killed by Jack the Ripper back in 1888. It just seems super interesting to me because when you hear serial killers, spree killers, all those, you always hear about the killer, the horrible person, and not the victims. And I want to know who these women were just trying to survive in London as women in a time of great gender inequality, you know? But just reading the description, it gives me this research vibe that the last podcast on the left is known for, where there's just super thorough and they come at it from all angles and they're not trying to like notarize the killer. It's a historical biographical book set in Great Britain. And I think, older teens, adults would go for this if you are super interested in history or obsessed with learning about death, which we're human. Who isn't?
Yeah.
You got anything that you would suggest people save their checkouts on?
Yes, I have one. And it's more of a personal preference. So there is a trope that I don't enjoy. And this book has it. And I was like, nope. And I DNF'd it. I did not finish that book. So it is a book that is pretty well known in the YA community. It is an older book. The book is The Vincent Boys by Abby Glines. It's a book about a girl who grew up with two boys who are cousins. Their families are very close. They spent like, all their summers vacationing together. The one boy is a golden child and the other boy is a bad boy. And she's dating the golden boy, but she's always had feelings for the bad boy. And the book begins with her coming across him trying to leave a party with his girlfriend, and they're both drunk and he's going to drive. And so she like forces him to let her drive them home. They start like hanging out from there, and her boyfriend is out of town, and they're like started admitting that they have feelings for each other. Like right from the, like, this is like, I don't think I was even 50 pages into this book. Okay. All of this has happened already. I was just like, no, I am not a fan of the cheating trope. I hate it so much. If you have feelings for somebody else, that's totally fine. Just let your current person know. And I mean, if they're cool with like putting like a pause for you to figure out what's going on with your emotions, if not, break up. I don't understand why you have to hurt somebody else to figure out your own stuff. But yeah, it's a personal preference. If you don't enjoy the cheating trope, I would stay far, far, far away from this book.
As you know, Beck, Sam and I are house hunting, as you and Zach have started doing as well.
Yep.
And you know me. I can't make any major decisions without learning the complete ins and outs of what's going on. So I checked out the Smart First Time Home Buying Guide by Thomas Lutz on Hoopla. I was like, all right, cool. I'll just skim through it, get some tips if there's any like trade secrets or whatever.
Yeah.
First off, I do want to say, sure, there's a couple of good pieces of advice in here, like how to not rush or feel pressured during the home buying process, if that's a possibility. Sometimes housing decisions need to be quick. Humans need shelter. That's a basic need. And then my favorite is the no honor code applies that he talks about. You can no longer take people's words for anything. That used to mean something back in the day. It doesn't mean anything now. So if you're doing any deals or anything like that, you need that stuff in writing. However, the problems I had basically stem from, it's mostly about saving up for your down payment. Whopping 20% on $100,000 to $200,000 house or more. That's a lot of money. Okay. That's also, they tell you not to really do that anymore. Nowadays, there's tons of programs available for home buyers where you can put down like 3%. And with something this big, honestly, I personally, this is all anecdotal. I feel like you should always bring someone in. Like, sure, you can try and do it yourself and save money. But I think with what you would end up doing at the end, like with your home inspection and everything, if you did it yourself, you would come out about even if you just went right away and talked to a finance guy or a real estate agent. Especially us, all of our listeners are in Southeast Michigan. Someone in your family or your friends group works at Quicken. Give them a call.
For real.
Give them a call. They'll help you out. Don't worry about it. Just give them a call. They'll hook you up. You ready for the worst thing about the book?
Oh God, yeah.
So I was reading it, kind of skimming it, going through like, oh yeah, this. And this is totally my fault. I should have paid more attention. It's 50 pages, Becky. That's it. I was not prepared. I just was going through. I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess some of this is okay. And then it said end of book. And I said, what? So, and all of the info that was in there is readily available with some internet searching. And you've already learned it if you've read articles already. It was a waste of a checkout for me. There was no new information, and some of it was antiquated and doesn't apply to everybody. Save a checkout. No Smart First Time Home Buying Guides. Not that smart.
Yeah, it ain't smart at all.
We hope we've given you some new books to borrow from Hoopla. If you end up checking them out, be sure to come back and tell us what you thought in the comments.
See you next time on Sounds Like a Bunch of
Hoopla!